We're following the breaking news in Northern California today, where a Sacramento man has been arrested in connection with the recent murders across the area. My name's Ireland May, and I bring you the latest developments in the case of the Vampire of Sacramento. Earlier this week, 3 bodies were discovered in a Sacramento home. The state of the bodies and the home appear to create a connection with last week's murders of Teresa Wallin. An arrest has finally been made today in connection with both cases. The suspect arrested was publicly named as Richard Chase, who was identified by a former classmate. Chase's classmate reached out to officials after connecting Chase with the profile released by the FBI. Chase not only matched the profile, but had distinct features to allow him to stand out. Standing at 5 feet 11 inches tall, Chase was a mere 135 pounds, making him extremely thin. He also had long hair with a beard, however his eyes were sunken and hollow, and he had a gray coloration to his skin. While the investigation of the most recent homicides is still in the early stages, officials have released new details to the public. The 3 bodies found this week were identified as 38-year-old Evelyn Baroth, her 51-year-old friend Dan Meredith, her 6-year-old son Jason, and her 22-month-old nephew David. David was alleged to be at the scene at the time of the murder, however, he is still missing. All 3 victims at the scene were found to have a gunshot to the head, however, Evelyn was found in a much more horrific state. Not only was she sodomized and cut open, but officials report that there is evidence at the scene to suggest Chase collected her blood. The murders at the Baroth home were connected with the murder of 22-year-old Teresa Wallin, who was found dead in her home last week. Wallin was 3 months pregnant at the time of the murder and was found by her husband the same night. She was also killed with a gunshot and had been raped before being dissected as well. Officials also suspect that her gruesome attack was to collect her blood. Today, police have officially announced their suspicion that the drive-by shooting in December is connected with Chase as well. The drive-by that killed 51-year-old Ambrose Griffin was connected with the same firearm used in the subsequent murders. During Chase's arrest, the firearm was found on his person. Here we have the identities of all 6 victims connected with Chase: Evelyn and Jason Baroth, Dan Meredith, David, Teresa Wallin, and Ambrose Griffin. At this time, David is still missing. Investigators believe that Chase took him from the home when he fled the scene. There was evidence of a gunshot along with a great amount of blood found in David's crib, suggesting that he was murdered before his body was taken. The DA announced today that they will be pursuing charges against Chase for the murders. Their possible upcoming charges are homicide in violation of California's Penal Code 187. In order for the charges to stick, the prosecution must prove 3 elements. The first element is that the defendant committed an act that caused the death of another person or fetus. They must next prove that the defendant had a state of mind called malice aforethought, and finally that they killed without lawful excuse or justification. The DA further stated that they will be pursuing charges in the first degree. In order to obtain a first-degree conviction, which will result in the death penalty, the prosecution must further prove another 3 elements. Those elements include that the defendant acted willfully, they acted deliberately, and they acted with premeditation. I now bring you some statistics in relation to the circumstances of Chase's murders. In 14% of all homicides this year, there is no relationship between the victim and the perpetrator. 64% of homicides this year were committed with a firearm. In 17% of cases, victims were aged 20 to 24. In 9% of cases, victims were aged 35 to 39. In 2% of cases, victims were aged 1 to 4. And in 1% of cases, victims were aged 5 to 9. Lastly, 76% of murder cases this year have led to the arrest and prosecution of a suspect. Officials have released 4 recommendations to the public to help keep them safe from perpetrators like Chase. These recommendations include keeping all doors and windows of your home locked, do not leave your home alone, call the police with any suspicious information you have, and increase the security of your home if possible to ensure your safety. That's all we have today. Continue watching this week to follow upcoming developments.